a standing ovation when he shows up.
Well, someone can make a motion when that time comes.
Motion for a standing ovation?
We'll see if it passes. Could we have roll call, please?
Mayor Peterson?
Here.
Member Bennett? Absent. Member Tesler? Absent. Member Nanke?
Here.
Member Clausen?
Here.
Member Dickey? Absent. Member Thomas? Here. Member Cannon?
Yes.
Member Clem? Absent. Member Berger?
Here.
Member Kylaway?
Here.
Member George? Absent. Member McEvely? Absent. Member Strozit?
Here.
Member Motley?
Here.
Member Pruitt? Absent.
Thank you. Member Berger, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we will defer the minutes. We don't need a motion to defer the minutes, do we, or do we?
No.
We can't approve a motion.
I was just listening to NPR discussing Catch 22 yesterday. All right, correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
There was no correspondence this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And item number 6, handout material, and is Ms. Neville giving there?
Yes, here she is.
Good evening. Madam Chair, I'm Deborah Neville, the Budget Officer, and we are going to have the Budget Analyst this evening present to you the item 6A.
I would move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Member Mistraza. Good evening.
Yes.
Madam Chair, there is item number 3, approval of the meeting agenda that we should probably address.
Thank you.
I would so move approval of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Nanke and seconded by Member Clausen, to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And Member Bennett is here, so we do have a quorum. And once again, we'll let Chris get started.
Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. My name is Chris Nider. I'm the Budget Analyst for the City of Salem. And tonight I'm here to present to you the annual report for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2010-11 that we just finished up. In your handouts, you have a copy of the report. In general, this is a slide. We have a couple slides here to show what we're looking at, how things happened over the last fiscal year. Up here you see a summary of the fiscal year 9-10 and 10-11.
Excuse me, would you mind adjusting your mic a little bit to make
Okay.
sure CCTV picks it up?
All right, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'd like to show with this quarterly report is that, as you can see on this next slide, that our current revenues in the fiscal year 10-11 came in at $94.5 million, and our expenditures for fiscal year 10-11 came in at 94.46, almost flat. And if you take a look at the current revenues of $879,000 is what the year-over-year growth was in the current revenues. That growth percentage is actually less than 1%. it's like 0.9. And while our expenditures down here grew by 3.4 million, an increase of about 3.7%.
It's not good.
On this next slide, we're going to go over just a little bit of the four largest funds, or sorry, four largest revenue sources within the general fund. Property tax, franchise fees, internal charges, state shared revenue. Those are the four largest. On here, you see a pie chart that shows a kind of an overall view of what the how these revenues fall in line with the rest of the budget, or sorry, with the rest of the actual revenues that we received. Property tax, as you show here, and beginning fund balance, these are the two main pieces of the pie, along with our franchise fees. Going into the property tax actually increased by 2.8%. Looking down further into that, $1.4 million growth year over year. There was, in current taxes increase, that was a $1.2 million increase. And the remaining $200,000 is miscellaneous prior year and prior year taxes that were paid. The next line item here, franchise fees. The franchise fees actually decreased by 0.5% due to natural gas revenues that did not come in as anticipated. There was a rate reduction that was implemented back in January 2010, and that was a mid-year reduction for our fiscal year, but we see that it's taken a little bit of an impact on our current revenues. In the internal charges area, we see a drop year over year of about $700,000 there. The majority of that is actually related to transfers from the emergency medical services to the general fund that did not take place in the 10-11 fiscal year that had previously been taking place. The next line item there is state shared revenue. As you can see, it grew slightly, due mainly to the alcohol beverage tax and the normal state sharing revenue. So the overall net increase was, like I said, 0.9%, less than 1%. Taking a look at this a little bit, another different side of just current revenues, we see that property tax is about 56.6% of all the actual current year revenues that come in. Franchise fees at 14.7% and internal charges at 11.6%. And you see the dollar figures on the side of what actual came in. For the expenditures, the major growth you can see here, obviously personal services here are increased by 2.6%, which was $1.7 million more than the previous year, mainly due to merit increases and higher medical insurance and union contract agreements that increased, as well as a market wage adjustment. In the pie chart, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see that these are the departments within the city that receive general fund monies. Police, fire, IT, the library, CMO, legal, etc. The next part out here is the materials and services. You notice that there's a year-over-year increase of approximately $1.3 million. Embedded in that is actually $1.2 million worth of de jure borrowing, money that's spent and then repaid within a day or two. And so it actually artificially inflates both our revenues as well as our expenditures. The next line item, capital outlay, pretty flat. We're not a whole lot of change in there. Debt service went down a little bit, and then transfers actually increased by 19.1%. Within the transfers piece, there is actually some one-time costs related to higher workers' compensation costs, computer software backup system, land sale proceeds, and airport taxiway grant matching funds that were paid out. And so the net increase was, as I said before, 3.7% in our expenditures. In general, just general conclusions is that expenditures are obviously outpacing our current year revenues. Personal services account for 72.5% of the overall budget, and property tax accounts for 47.6% if you include the beginning fund balance. If you take that out, then it's a larger 56%. Looking forward, we know that we'll be getting more information about the economy and how economic growth is impacting the revenues that we're seeing, and as well as the state and at the city level. Public employees' retirements costs, healthcare costs are continuing to grow. We see that impact on a yearly basis. And things that we should be looking forward to do is taking advantage of any efficiencies and technological advances that we can to mitigate the future rises in expenditures. Moving from there to from the general fund to a few of the other funds. There's 20 other funds within the city. Public Works, as you can see, is listed here, and it's the first one on your chart. The beginning fund balance here increased 46.1%, mainly due to a change or just a fewer expenditures compared to the revenues that came in. You can see that the actual revenues, current year revenues, were $22.2 million compared to $21.59 million worth of expenditures, and so that was able to keep a positive fund balance. I'm not planning on going through all 20 of these extra funds, but I did list a few of them here just for grins and giggles, really. Airport fund, current revenues of just under $1 million. Expenditures we're keeping in line or matching as best as possible. Culture and tourism, the revenues and expenditures, you see there's a slight growth in the fund balance. Once again, current revenues are coming in about $2.2 million compared to expenditures of $2 million. So we have a fund balance of $654,497. Building and safety. With the building and safety, we're looking at current revenues of $2.6 million, a year-over-year decrease of $1.2 million. And that is due to the slowdown in the large construction projects. In the previous years, we've had the state hospital, and this last year we had the Home Depot as two major construction projects that brought in permanent revenues to the Building and Safety Fund. Obviously, with those larger projects, what happens is that there is a large amount of money that comes in at the beginning of that project, and then what happens is the inspections usually come at a later point in time, and those expenditures are reflected in this higher expenditure amount here. And so that it was actually eating down the ending fund balance and reducing the overall ending fund balance that we have available. The last one that I would like to talk about is the Water and Sewer Fund. The Water and Sewer Fund here, you see actual beginning fund balance of $30.3 million and current revenues of $74.3 million for a total of $104.6 million. The expenditures were at 71.2 million, which is slightly less than what the prior year expenditures were. And it maintains a healthy fund balance of $33.4 million. With that, I turn the time back over to Madam Chair, and if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions for staff at this time? Member Nanki and then Member Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question on that last fund, on the water sewer fund. Last year, we had budgeted 10 million over what expenditures were, and then similar, well, 2 years ago, and then this last year again as well. Did we actually expect to spend 81 million and only spent 71, or why did we budget knowing what the actuals were for 9/10?
Very good question. Let me see if I can.
Excuse me, I think Peter Fernandez, our interim deputy city manager, is prepared to answer that question.
Peter Fernandez, interim deputy public works, interim deputy public works director, interim deputy city manager. The bulk of the savings was the allocation related to capital construction. That money was not expended because the engineering division is fully engaged and there's still projects going on. So that was $6.5 million that was not transferred to, remains in the fund, was not transferred to capital construction at this
Can I
time.
follow on that? So will we actually be doing several $1 million worth of capital construction then?
Well, there's tens of millions of dollars of projects, but they're all backlogged. So, you know, the combination of the Streets and Bridges bond and several other projects are, because those have to be delivered in a timely manner, those are taking precedence over the water and sewer projects. So rather than transferring the money and then having it sit in the capital construction fund, it's actually still sitting, you know, in Fund 310. So that's
But
why.
it will be used for capital water,
That's right,
sewer,
that's right. Now, there's another
knowing that
story.
we have a lot of those things to
That's
do as
right.
well.
Now, there's another story to that. As revenues continue to decline, and the Water and Sewer Fund has revenue problems the same way that the general fund has, we are not, our revenues are not keeping pace, and the savings that we're being able to, there's some operational savings, but we're not getting the full $6.5 million in, we're not getting the amount of revenue that we expected to be able to save $6.5 million.
Okay.
And that's an issue that we'll be talking about, you know, as the budget season continues and as we get into the budget presentations. But there are revenue issues in Fund 310 as well.
Okay, thanks.
Member Bennett and then Member Clausen.
Thank you. Peter? I just wanted to follow up on that, and I had another question, but so those are capital funds. Those are not eligible then to, for you to hire engineers to kind of speed up the process? You're not able to?
Well, we could. They are general water and sewer funds that we had budgeted for capital. The concern that we have with we run the engineering division like a consulting firm. So the day we're out of capital money, we have to cut engineers. So we are in what we feel is a fairly balanced point right now. We're a little backlogged, but we prefer having a 2 to 3 year backlog and assure that there's a steady stream of work for the staff that we have, rather than to, you know, hire 2, 3, 4 people, get all the work done, and then have to lay them off. So we prefer to we manage ourselves to a steady state, and that's where we're at right now, staff-wise.
Okay.
Is that it?
Member Clausen may have a question.
Yeah, another question.
Do you want to follow up with him?
That wasn't following up. That's
Why don't you go ahead? Sorry.
Thanks.
I'm here all night.
I think maybe you touched on it, Peter, but my question would be with that $6.5 million. I have a sinking feeling when I see $6.5 million that's in a pot that can be used for other things. Can we earmark those dollars where they cannot be used for operations and just capital funds, or what can we do on that? Because I really don't want to see us falling behind more on our capital maintenance than we are already.
That is an excellent suggestion. I will tell you that to do that, we're going to have to raise rates, because we simply do not have, as we have the projections, we simply do not have the revenue right now to maintain operations and do the $6.5 million. We are preparing a budget that has that $6.5 million allocated. We will probably have to do some more significant belt tightening in the water and sewer fund to be able to achieve that. But in the long run, we really will not have a choice but to propose rate increases. And we'll be back with a rate proposal at the end of next year to talk about that. I will tell you that the CIP that we prepared 3 years ago called for $10 million a year in improvements. So we cut that back to 6.5, and we're having trouble being able to make the 6.5. Our plan would be to save it. In fact, we've kept track of what we have not transferred and would want to transfer the whole thing because we have extraordinary needs coming up, but there's no way to balance that, and there's no way to make that transfer unless we see some more some rate increases, and we'll have a lot more discussion of that at the Water Wastewater Task Force, and then at the council later on next year.
So I guess I don't want to get too deep into it here by any means, but I think maybe I'd like to voice my concern that we make sure we're keeping on those capital funds, and I'd like to be able to track as we go through this budget season in this next year. I'd like to track, okay, what did we have allocated for capital improvement, and I want to see how those dollars go up or down in this next budget cycle, because I just hate seeing us with 100-year-old pipes, if we don't.
Counselor, I appreciate
that,
you asking the question, and I appreciate the idea of essentially creating a savings account. We borrowed, we're still $220 million in debt in the utility. So we cannot borrow anymore. So we are really on a path of doing every project that we can with cash. We don't want to borrow. We can't afford to borrow, but we have a tremendous number of needs. So we're right with you. We have every penny allocated, and we'll be happy to show it to you. And if we can figure out a way to operate our utility and save that capital money and put it in a reserve account for capital, we fully support that.
Okay, thank you.
Member Motley and then Member Bennett. Member Motley?
Yes, for you, Peter.
Yes.
Just a couple of quick questions. Why does water and sewer, why do streets and bridges projects, as far as design or engineering, supersede water and sewer projects? That's number one. And number two, why, if existing staff, if we're in a 2 or 3 year backload for A&E work, rather than hiring employees and then laying them off to allay your fear that way, why aren't we engaging private A&E firms to do that?
Great questions. The answer to the first question is streets and bridges are bonded projects. So by law, we have to deliver those, we have to expend those funds within 3 years of selling the bond. We have only sold a third of our $100 million, the voters passed a $100 million bond measure in November of '08. We have only sold about $25 million of that to do the first set of projects. But once we sell, we're on the clock. So those projects have to be delivered within 3 years, or we run into IRS problems. So they then have to take precedence because they're on a time frame. We are still doing water and sewer work. We're just not doing it at the same pace that we have to do streets and bridges bond work. In response to your second question, we hire all kinds of engineering firms, private firms. We still have to have the staffing to manage those firms. I mean, you cannot allow a firm to come in and not have a project manager overseeing their work. It'd be like you having a contractor doing your house, and you go on vacation for a year and come back, and the contractor has done whatever they've done. So we need to have, we are the owners, and so we have to manage that. So we balance our staff. Our staff does both engineering work themselves, and they manage architecture, or engineering firms, and we have a whole roster of engineering firms. In fact, the bulk of the design work that we do for streets and bridges and utility work is all done by private engineering firms from the area and, then the region.
So our engineers are more contract managers than engineers in terms of function?
They're both. We like to call them project managers. They are all registered professional engineers that do this kind of work, and they both do design work and they manage, and we also leverage their time with consultants. So, they may be managing 2, 3, 4 projects at one time, and they're doing a combination depending on what they have on their plate of both things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Bennett?
On the general fund, I wondered, I guess, 2 things. One, do you include the general fund eligible dollars in other funds when we get the amount in the ending fund balance? I mean, we get a gross amount in the ending fund balance. Does that include all general fund eligible dollars that are also ending fund balances?
I'm trying to understand what you mean by general fund
Well,
eligible
let's say we've
dollars.
got
Like
in the
parks, maybe,
in the
that we-
transient occupancy tax, there is an ending fund balance of $180,000.
Right.
Is that included in your total, because it would be general fund eligible or eligible for some general fund
No, we
programs?
have this by fund, and so we have TOT. Chris, is that correct in terms of how you did these numbers, or in a separate?
Correct, they are separate,
Number.
they are not part of
Yeah.
the general fund.
Is there any way to identify among all of the ending fund balances what there is general fund eligible?
Which of those we could use for general fund operation expenses if we need to? Yes, we can do that.
I'm just thinking that might be helpful as we start looking forward, just to have at least an asterisk by those that are eligible for some sort of general fund allocation.
Okay,
Great,
we can
thank
do
you.
that.
Would some of those would be available for some general fund expenditures, but not for others? So because of talking about TOT, because of its charter, it could be used for some general fund things, but not for others.
That's right.
All right, I think we are ready to move on to the urban renewal financial report.
I'll handle that.
Which is item 6B on our agenda.
There we go. Good evening. As I introduced myself earlier, I'm Deborah Neville, the Budget Officer, and welcome tonight, Budget Committee members. I'm going to go over the next handout item, which is our Urban Renewal Agency annual report comparing 9-10 to fiscal year 10-11. In fiscal year 10-11, we received in the debt service fund $12.1 million in current property tax among all of our urban renewal areas. This is an increase of about 2.3% over the prior fiscal year. The urban renewal areas that experienced some decreases were Waterfront, South Waterfront, and Riverfront downtown. However, some of our other areas experienced increases. And I'll go into those a little bit later in the report. The construction resources came from primarily beginning balance. They carried over beginning balance from one year to the next, and that for the whole fund, the urban renewal construction, was $15.9 million. So they actually took in $5.8 million of current revenue, much of which was du jour borrowing. Let's see here. In the expenditure, just to summarize the expenditures, our debt service fund did meet its budget. However, some of the urban renewal areas as we delve into the report, appear to be overexpended. However, this was an effort to clean up and align our de jure borrowing so that it's actually on time and on track, and we should not have that in the future. So although each urban renewal area, or some 3 urban renewal areas, may look over budget, the fund level as a total meets budgetary authority, and we will not have that issue in future years. Turning to the Pringle Creek urban renewal area, as you probably know, the timeline for closing this urban renewal is December 2011, and that is on track. We have very few expenditures and very few revenues coming into this area. In Riverfront downtown, our current year tax receipts were down about $60,000 compared to last year. However, the total resources for urban Riverfront downtown were due to an increased beginning balance, and that was increased to meet debt service requirements. Riverfront downtown construction, we completed several infrastructure improvements, and they were in the High Street water line, renovations to downtown parking structures, the toolbox loan grant disbursements, and pedestrian bulb outs. And that accounted for the increase in expenditures in 10-11. Fairview construction, we have the primarily expenditures. Our taxes are set by a specific amount, sufficient to pay off our debt in that particular group or area. And we have completed the strong road improvements in fiscal year 10-11, or 11-12, as well as the required wetland mitigation. North Gateway urban renewal area, moving on to, I'm not using the slides. I'm not used to using slides, and I apologize. I'm sorry. It's all on your sheets, though. Yeah, I see you're all reading along with me, so I'm okay. We're on page 3, by the way, of that particular handout.
Page 3 of the urban renewal.
Yes, thank you, and I'm sorry to interrupt my flow. North Gateway urban renewal area, we are, this is one of the areas where we had the repayment of the outstanding debt. And if you look at our budget versus actual on that page, we budgeted $8.5 million and spent $11 million. This was all part of the de jure realignment effort that we went through in fiscal year 10-11. Expenditures in the construction fund for North Gateway included toolbox grant disbursements and expenditures related to the Portland Road underpass and purchase of right-of-way needed for future improvements to Portland Road. West Salem urban renewal area is another one of those areas in the debt area that we had the de jure realignment going on. And expenditures in the construction portion for West Salem urban renewal consisted of the purchase of the 2nd Street median, and the remaining expenditures would have covered staff time in support of the project and the whole urban renewal area. Mill Creek urban renewal area, our property tax increased by $66,000 or 46% due to the sale of the land, the state land that the Home Depot has purchased, and the remaining year amount of the revenues came from loan proceeds as well as beginning fund balance. The expenditures of about $527,000 were for wetland construction projects in this area. I'm going to skip to South Waterfront urban renewal area. McGilchrist is not very active. In South Waterfront, we experienced a loss of tax increment revenue from fiscal year 10-11 to 11-12 due to the decreased valuations on the Meridian and the demolition of buildings on the Boise site. So once the economy turns around, we may see some increase. We hope to see increase in revenue there. And then once again, as there's not a lot of activity, the expenses have gone for project coordination on behalf of our staff and services related to planning and redevelopment of the Boise Cascade site. On the last page of the material, page 6, we've got the Salem Conference Center Fund. We have a net increase of 14.8% in food and beverage sales, which is a good thing, so the revenues were up. And then the expenditures were also up by 8.5%. So we have more revenues coming in than expenditures, which adds to the ending balance for this particular fund. And then our conference center gain-loss reserve, we are picking up that fund balance, reaching our goal of $4 million a little bit every year. The expenditures that did occur totaled $70,000 for fiscal year 10-11 and included some small things such as sealing the brick in the courtyard, some new radios, some kiosk work, and the artwork for the mayor's annual art invitational. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Manager Norris, you had something to tell us?
Yes, I wanted to go back to the general fund for a few minutes. If council would go to page 1, this sheet in your packet that talks about City of Salem 10-11 fourth quarter financial report, general fund summary. If you'll notice that in the revenues portion, what we budgeted in 9-10, what we expected to get in revenue was about $95.2 million, and what we received was $93.66. In 10-11, we budgeted 95.3, and we thought we were making a conservative estimate at that time, and you can see we received 94.5. We received yesterday or 2 days ago our estimated property tax collections for this current year, and they're $947,000 less than we budgeted, so almost $1 million less than we budgeted. So that's a trend that's continuing, and I'm concerned that it's going to continue for some time. As you know, our goal has been to increase the beginning fund balance over this period of time, knowing that in this year we'd have to start using some of that, and to try to always keep our expenditures in a year below what we receive in current revenue. And we've been able to do that, although just barely this last year, only by $85,000. To make it through this time frame, which I used to think was 3 years ago, I thought it was 5 years. I still think it's 5 years, so that's getting into 8 years. And it could be longer than that. We cannot afford to continue our current level of service with the revenue that we're going to be receiving every year and stay within our current revenue. And I know you all know that, but I just want to emphasize that again. And the piece of news that we'll have about $1 million less in property tax this current year than we thought we were going to have. And then we found out later this afternoon that we'll be losing about $172,000 for that Comcast suit that the county is going to reduce our amount by. So we'll have it between about $94 and $95 million this year. Next year, we're at this time anticipating that to be almost flat, and depending on what happens with assessed valuations, it could be even a little lower than that. So I want you to know, it's still 95 million. It's not nothing. It's still quite a bit of money, but it's not going to support the service system that we have right now. So we've been thinking about that for months, and department heads are putting together some recommendations right now, and we'll do what we can this year to continue to save money and reduce costs, and hopefully not in a one-time basis, but over the years, so that as we did in 2008, we'll do the same thing again now to keep us in a stable position, because that's what we owe the community, and is frankly our only choice. There's not many new revenue options, so we're going to have to live within the revenue that we have. So we'll put some plans together. The things that we can do administratively, we'll go ahead and take action on now, and anything that requires a change in program or policy or a project the council's asked us to budget, we'll bring that back to City Council for your discussion and direction on those. But wanted to let you know, I think we're looking at a difficult budget time, even a little more difficult than I was anticipating it to be this year. But we've got a lot of bright, able department heads and managers in the city, and I know we'll be able to come up with some good recommendations to keep things going.
Thank you. Moving along to item 6C, and Manager Norris, did you want to give us a little refresher on our after-action evaluation?
I think actually Ms. Neville's planning to do that.
All
Yes.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Item 6C is our after-action evaluation. And as you may recall, all of you were invited to attend one of several small group meetings to critique our process that we went through last year and provide suggestions for what you thought might work and help us this year. 12 Budget Committee members attended one of those sessions, and I have compiled through a series of the minutes and minutes taken by Sean O'Day, an overview of the kinds of comments that we received. We've also then, on this report, provided information as to what of the suggestions and improvements that you see we are able to implement. Some of them we cannot implement, but I'd like to emphasize the ones that we are, and those are outlined on the second page of your report. You can see the council goals. We received several comments about the city council putting the goals together a little bit earlier in the process, and to invite the budget committee members to the city council sessions. And just a little preview of our immediate months to come ahead, we have an economic presentation by Mr. Timothy Dewey coming up. We have the 5-year forecast coming up in November, and then in early December on the 5th, the City Council will be holding a work session to which the Budget Committee is invited to attend, where they will be setting budget goals and some policies. So this is a little earlier than we've done it in some years, and we're able to take care of that. Rules and procedures comments. We have been asked to describe the purpose and the role of the Budget Committee, establish some definitions for commonly used terms within the committee meetings, and discuss the rules that the committee will use at the beginning of the process. So we fully intend to take care of these issues, and tonight you'll also see reported a brief paper on the role of the Budget Committee, and we will distribute further terms. We do have a glossary in the back of each budget that contains many terms, such as fund, what is a fund, a division, a department, and so forth, but we will elaborate a little bit more thoroughly on that list of the terms that we're using in our conversational and presentation moments. Department presentations, the comments received there in general were to reduce the presentation time on behalf of departments in order to allow more time for discussion and questions, to focus on big changes in the upcoming year and what is different from the prior year, and that we should continue with the noon meetings, but instead of starting out with just questions and answers, have the department provide a brief overview before we lodge into the questions and answers. In response to that, we have adopted, the City Council just adopted a calendar a couple of weeks ago that contains a mix of Budget Committee review meetings. It's a little bit different than what we've experienced in the past. We have 2 Budget Committee meetings scheduled for January for the purpose of reviewing department operations. So this is where you'll hear about how many employees the department has, what their budget is, what some of their goals are, what ones they have met. And then we'll save the budgetary meetings for those in April. We have 4 meetings scheduled in April, so actually we have 6 meetings, which is what we've always had, but we're just going to break them up and put different subject matter in front of you at each of those. So those 4 meetings in April will actually be to talk about the big changes in the budget and the specific budget issues.
And I do want to emphasize that at that time, because we're going to be needing to recommend some big changes, that we need to hopefully keep that discussion at that level, because we won't have enough time, I think, to really get into minute discussions about individual budgets.
And I just described most of this. The noon meetings, we certainly can arrange those to contain a brief department overview before engaging in the question and answer portion of it. These were the areas that had the most comments on and the most concerns, and that's why we have chosen to focus on those and do think that they will help to smooth out the process and provide better information to you, the Budget Committee, and to the public, the citizens of Salem. Madam Chair?
Thank you. Member Nenke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 issues. One, there is no attachment 1 to this report showing the summary of the meetings and what dates and who was at those, as identified in paragraph 2 of facts and findings. So I'd be interested in actually seeing that attachment.
We will send those
Thank
out
you.
if you didn't get them. Okay.
And then, in regards to the department overviews, the departments do that for counselor orientations. Do we not have something in writing that we could just shoot out to people before to make the meetings more efficient rather than having to provide something we already have in writing and the budget committee members could read that prior to attending that meeting?
Yes, we
Or
can
even those who
definitely do
don't
that.
or can't attend those, then they still at least have that overview potential.
Yes, we can do that.
Any other questions or comments?
I have just a quick comment, and that has to do with the calendar that the council adopted last week for the budget committee dates. I would encourage everyone to please look at that calendar. I know that Officer Deborah Neville did send out a complete listing via email to all of us. And so I'm really only preaching to the choir because those of you who are in front of me are here. But those who aren't had conflicts tonight and didn't know that this meeting, it wasn't noticed for them early enough. But I really do want to impress upon those of you here and the rest of the council and budget committee members that these meetings are just going to be crucial. And it's really an important item for you to place on your calendars and make the time available and to be here to participate. It is going to be a rugged and rigorous year, and we're going to need all the bright minds that we can get to come to these meetings to thoroughly understand what's going on with the budget, what's causing the changes in the budget, and to be those citizen representatives and those council members with good ideas and good intent to help us through this planning. Thank you.
Can I also add, Mayor Peterson, to your comment, the fly sheet, the city council every week, they do have a council meeting, has what we call a fly sheet, and it outlines all of their closely approaching meetings, public hearings, and work sessions. The entire budget committee calendar is now contained on that fly sheet. So if you have any doubt, you can turn to the web and find that on the most current council agenda.
Good. Thank you. That's a good point.
Member Berger?
You noted that in January, we'll have 2 meetings to go over the departments, and then in April, we'll have 4 meetings to get into those budgets. Is there a reason those 2 are so separated? I just feel it's a budget committee meeting. I'm going to wonder what you guys talked about 3 months earlier in covering those budgets, and I'm worried I'll have the same questions that you just answered in January, but it's 3 months later, and I'll need the refresher all over again.
Part of the reason is staff time. We have 3 people in the budget office and so many an analyst in each department that's preparing the budget. So January is far enough away from our real crunch time. We're going to be crunched even in January, but it's a scheduling issue for accomplishing our tasks so that we can best deliver the information. And we won't have the budgets ready to review at that time. We'll be working on those between January and April.
But before, you were doing it both at the exact same time, discussing the...
We were, if I could add to that, from the interviews that we had with budget committee members, the thought was that right now when we present every department's budget, they do an overview of what their department does and what the services and what the programs are. And then we talk about the major changes in that budget. The thought was if we could do the overview in January and then really just stay focused at the budget committee member meetings in the spring, just stay focused on the major changes in the budget, that we could have better discussion about the budget and get more focused on the numbers instead of how many people are in which division, that sort of thing.
And I guess what I'm saying is I agree with the separation. I just think separating them too much, if it was March, you were giving those overviews, and then April, we're discussing the budget, it'd all be very much fresh in our heads on, we just talked about what this does, and now let's talk about their budget 2 weeks later. 3 months is a little separated. I can
Yes,
remember 3 months what the city does. It would just be more efficient for me as a person to just do it all in the 6 weeks and start with what they do and then get into their budgets a couple weeks later as opposed to 3 months later.
In March, we can look at that schedule again, and I understand what you're saying. In March, the departments are going to be really crunched to make the final decisions on the budget, and so having to stop that work and do the presentations, I think, won't work
Okay.
for us. So we'll see what we can do, though, to give enough summary information that'll be easy for you to refer back to. Okay.
I have a point I'd like to add also to that, and that is that we haven't scheduled them yet, but this year, I would very much like us to have at least 2 community meetings on the budget, because there are going to be changes. There's a lot of information that we, the Budget Committee, need to take out to the community. And probably we're going to be doing those meetings around the end of January, beginning of February. We don't have dates set yet. We'll be talking with all of you about dates and the locations for those, which areas of town. But that's another thing that we're all going to have to also crank into our calendars.
In other words, there will be budget committee meetings between those that are already on our calendar, between January and April.
That's right.
Okay.
We'll release you at the end of June.
Really?
Not you, not the council.
Member Motley?
Yes, in response to Mayor Peterson's comment, suggestion, observation, last year was my first year, and I took it upon myself as a Budget Committee member from Ward 6 to go to at least once to every neighborhood association meeting within Ward 6. I went to 4 different neighborhood associations and introduced myself and kind of told them what my perspective on the Budget Committee was, and asked them to tell me what their issues and proposals were. I have to tell you, it wasn't really productive. It caught virtually everyone off guard because that had never been done before. But it was interesting, and it gave them an opportunity to tell me, as an example, I'm concerned about my water bill. What do you want me to do about it? Find out why this, etc. Okay, and that, whether it gave them any help or not, it certainly helped me. And so, in response to your observation and suggestion, I think it's a great suggestion, and I would urge my fellow Budget Committee members, whether they are counselors or volunteers or whatever, to go to the various neighborhood association meetings and introduce yourselves, ask for time to do that, and then listen and offer yourself up as a sounding board to them. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good idea. And in past years, there were even as many as, I think, 4 budget community conversations that were held. So we're hoping that 2 might suffice this year, just because of everyone's busy schedules. But we really believe that it's important to get out to the community and explain where we are with the budget and what we're going to have to do.
I appreciate Member Motley's comments, because that's the way we do it in Ward 5 as well. And I know that counselors are very good about attending their neighborhood association meetings, but we appointed citizen representatives are also obligated to represent our wards. So we should be not attending every single neighborhood meeting perhaps, but we certainly should be attending several of those and getting feedback from those we're supposed to represent. And we're still on C, right? Do we have any other comments or questions on item 6C? If not, item 6D, what is a budget committee? Ms. Neville?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This handout is prepared in response to the concerns discussed at the Budget Committee after action evaluation meetings. This is something that you can keep at hand. Primarily, it's a handout, but I do just want to point out that there is specified roles for the Budget Committee as defined in the ORS 294.4.1, 401.1. And That is to conduct public meetings, to discuss the budget message and review the proposed budget, listen to comments and questions from interested citizens and consider their points of view, recommend a budget to the city council, and approve the tax rate or tax amounts as the case may be. So it may seem like it's limiting, but this is what is required by the budget law, and it's what the role is. So now you all can understand what is going on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Neville. Will we have either the larger or the little mini budget manual, again, the state budget manual that Department of Revenue?
Certainly, we can pass that out, and we have two Budget Committee members that will hopefully be joining you, new ones. We don't know yet who they are, but we try to include them in some of this new information as well.
Thank you. I do not have a public testimony sheet, and I do not see lots of people here to testify, but are any members of the public here wanting to testify?
I think everyone's a staff member.
I think so too. I think I recognize every face in this room, but just in case. And Member Cannon, you had
Just when you get to item number 8.
item number 8. I think we're ready for other business. Member Cannon.
Yes, I would like to make a request of staff that if you have any new fees that are new in the budget, that they be specifically highlighted and identified not only in verbal presentations, but actually in a written form so that council as well as the Budget Committee members will know that there are new fees and what those fees are, what those fees might involve.
Thank you, we'll do that.
Not just increases, but any new fee.
New.
That's what I'm getting at, yes. And item number 2, again, a suggestion, just a question of the city manager. Are you going to make a short report to either the Budget Committee or City Council on the new numbers that you have received from the County Assessor's Office and how that might impact the current budget and whether or not you're going to need a supplemental budget? So not necessarily tonight, but in the future?
Yes, and those are the numbers I referred to a few minutes ago about we're about $1 million lower in revenue than we had in the budget. And I will be preparing a written statement to go out to councilors, and we'll copy the Citizen Budget Committee members on that. And we're still doing some analysis about whether we'll need a supplemental budget, but we'll let you know when we get to that point.
Any other comments under other business? Yes, Member
Just
Nanki?
kind of a quick question on that last piece. Will that information then go to Timothy Dewey? Does he actually use those kind of numbers on?
Yes, he will
to
have that
present
information,
Okay.
yes.
Excellent.
If there's no further Member Motley?
Yes, thank you. I see our city attorney in the audience, and so I would like to ask, I raised this question on the phone with a couple of people today in the city, and nobody seemed to know. And so now that council has taken some pretty definitive steps about
Could you speak into your mic,
reapportionment.
please?
Yes, thank you. About reapportionment. I'm curious what happens to volunteer budget committee members who live in a ward today and don't tomorrow. And, I guess if a counselor lives in a ward today and doesn't tomorrow, they, as I understand it, lose their position.
No, you can serve out the balance of your term.
Okay. Does that still apply to the budget committee? As I said, I asked today and people kind of, gee, I don't know.
Well, the issue with the counselors serving out their term is actually taken care of in the charter.
Okay.
So that is provided. There's actually nothing in the council rules that say anything about it. So ultimately, it would be a choice for the council, but there is no requirement that Citizen Budget Committee, legally under state law, there's no requirement that city budget committee members be appointed from a given ward.
Right,
So
that was council's choice.
that was council's choice. I'd have to take a look at our council rules, but I would assume that one policy decision the council could make is that upon reapportionment, the budget committee members will continue to serve out their term.
Member Nanki?
In that same light, now that we actually at least have boundaries that we're looking at going to, we can't say that they're actually in place, have we looked at budget committee residence locations? Because we have 2 openings now, right now that we're going to play with, and possibly everyone will be inside of a different ward, so they may not necessarily be representing the one they are now, but they would still be there, and then we would look for a new representative from one of the future layouts.
Yes, we have not done that yet because the decision was just on Monday, but we will do that right away, and we'll let council and any affected budget committee member know.
Because we do have a budget, or a boards and commissions meeting on
Yeah,
Friday.
We could. We
So
could.
it'd be nice if we could do a quick.
I believe this is the only city board or commission where wards factor in with the appointment process.
That's my recollection, but
And
we'll
knowing
double check
how
that.
hard it is sometimes, we may want to really just think that in general.
So the answer to Member Motley's question is to be continued, I take it?
That's right.
That's right.
Thank
This is the first I've learned of the question. If I'd known about it at 4 o'clock, I would have come with a good answer.
If I'd have thought to call you at 4, I would have.
Okay. It would probably take me about a half an hour to figure it out. but-
Thank you.
Any other business? All right, I hear there's a ball game tonight, so we are adjourned.
I don't get to watch TV.